The door to my twin sister's bedroom was locked from the outside. I stood there in the quiet hallway of her huge, beautiful house, staring at that lock, and my blood turned to ice. Rich people don't lock their family members inside rooms. Prison guards do that. Kidnappers do that. My hands shook as I picked the lock with a hairpin, something I learned years ago when we were poor and locked out of our apartment. The click sounded like thunder in my ears. When I pushed the door open, I saw her. Jasmine sat on the floor in the corner, hugging her knees. Her face was turned away from me. Even from behind, I could see she was too thin. Her hair, once long and shiny like mine, was chopped short and messy. The room was cold. There was a small bed, one chair, and nothing else. No pictures. No books. No life. Jazz. My voice cracked. She turned slowly, and I saw her face. Purple bruises covered her left cheek. Her lip was split. One eye was swollen half shut. But the worst part was her eyes. They looked empty, like someone had blown out a candle inside her. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe so you never miss what happens. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from because we absolutely love hearing from you. Now, let me tell you how two sisters who promised to protect each other ended up here, in this nightmare. We were born 42 years ago in the poorest part of the city. Our mom worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay for heat in winter. Jazz and I slept in the same bed, wearing every piece of clothing we owned to stay warm. We shared one pair of good shoes. When I went to school, she stayed home. When she went to school, I stayed home. We took turns. On our 10th birthday, Mom cried because she couldn't buy us a cake. That night, Jazz and I made a promise in the dark. We held hands under our thin blanket and whispered it like a prayer. "I'll never let you be poor again," I said. "I'll never let you be poor again," she said back. We meant it with our whole hearts. I was always good with numbers. While other kids played, I counted things. I counted our money, counted days until bills were due, counted how many meals we could make from one bag of rice. Numbers made sense when nothing else did. When I was 16, I got a job at a bank. I worked hard, so hard my hands hurt from writing. I studied at night while Jazz slept. I climbed and climbed, stepping on every opportunity like stairs. By the time I was 30, I managed money for rich people. By 35, I was the one the super rich called when they wanted to hide their wealth or make it grow. I moved to Geneva, Switzerland, where money flows like rivers and secrets are kept in vaults underground. I made so much money that I could finally breathe. I sent half of everything to Jazz. She never had to worry again. Or so I thought. Jazz stayed in our city. She went to college, became a teacher, and met Damien Whitmore at a charity event. Damien came from old money, the kind of wealth that has been in a family for 100 years. His mother, Victoria, controlled everything with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. When Damien told his mother he wanted to marry my sister, Victoria smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. I flew home for the wedding. It was the fanciest thing I'd ever seen. Ice sculptures. 1,000 white roses. Jazz looked like a princess in her dress. But when I hugged her, she whispered in my ear, "Promise you'll always answer when I call." "Always," I said. "Why?" "Just promise." I promised. Then I flew back to Geneva because a huge deal needed my attention. That was 5 years ago. At first, Jazz called me every week. Then every 2 weeks. Then once a month. Her emails got shorter. "Everything's fine. Don't worry. Damien's family keeps me busy." I was managing billions of dollars, flying between countries, sleeping 4 hours a night. I told myself she was just adjusting to married life. Rich people have different rules, different schedules. She was fine. But 3 months ago, her calls stopped completely. I tried calling her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I sent emails. No response. I sent letters to her house. Nothing came back. A cold fear started growing in my stomach, the kind of fear that wakes you up at night and won't let you sleep again. I called Damien's number. A woman answered. Her voice was cold and sharp. "This is Victoria Whitmore." "Who is calling?" "I'm Simone, Jasmine's sister. I need to speak with her. Jasmine is resting. She's not well. I'll tell her you called." The line went dead. "Not well?" Jazz was never sick. In our entire lives, I could count on one hand the time she caught a cold. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, that twin sense people talk about. The knowing. I cancelled all my meetings. I packed one bag. I got on a plane that same night. 14 hours later, I was standing outside the Whitmore mansion. A giant house with iron gates and security cameras everywhere. The guard at the gate wouldn't let me in. Family only, he said. I am family. I'm her sister. Her twin. He spoke into his radio. Waited. Shook his head. Mrs. Whitmore says Jasmine isn't receiving visitors. You need to leave. I left. But I didn't go far. I parked my rental car down the street and watched the house for 2 days. I saw Damien leave for work in his expensive car. I saw Victoria leave for her charity meetings. I saw servants come and go. But I never saw Jazz. Not once. Not even at a window. On the third night, when the house was dark and quiet, I climbed the wall. My fancy suit got ripped on the iron spikes at the top, but I didn't care. I dropped into the garden and ran to the back door. It was locked, but rich people always forget about old servants' entrances. I found one hidden behind thick bushes. The lock was rusty and old. It opened. I crept through the dark house like a ghost. My heart hammered so loud I was sure someone would hear it. I climbed the stairs. Checked room after room. 15 bedrooms, and none of them had Jazz. Then I found one more staircase, narrow and hidden, leading up to what must have been old servants' quarters in the attic. That's where I found the locked door. That's where I found my sister, broken and beaten in a cold room, looking at me with empty eyes that didn't recognize hope anymore. Jazz, I whispered, kneeling in front of her. It's me. It's Simone. I'm here. I'm so sorry I'm late, but I'm here now. One tear rolled down her bruised cheek. Then another. Then she fell forward into my arms and sobbed like her heart was breaking into a million pieces. I held her tight and made a new promise, one I would keep even if it cost me everything. I'm getting you out of here. And I'm going to make them pay. Jazz couldn't stop shaking in my arms. Her whole body trembled like a leaf in a storm. I held her tighter, trying to push all my strength into her through that hug. When she finally pulled back, her voice came out scratchy and small, like she hadn't used it in a long time. You have to leave, she whispered. If they find you here, they'll hurt you too. I'm not leaving without you. You don't understand. Victoria has cameras everywhere. Guards. Lawyers. Money. She has so much power, Simone. She'll destroy you. I looked into my sister's swollen eyes. Then let her try. Now tell me everything. Jazz's story came out in broken pieces, like a shattered mirror I had to put back together. It started small, she said. Little things that seemed normal at first. When she first married Damien, everything seemed perfect. The mansion was beautiful. Damien was kind. But Victoria lived with them, and Victoria had rules. So many rules. Jazz couldn't invite friends over without asking permission first. She couldn't go shopping without telling Victoria where and when. She had to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, smile a certain way. I thought it was just because she came from an old-fashioned family, Jazz said. I wanted to fit in. I wanted them to love me. But fitting in was impossible because the rules kept changing. If Jazz wore red, Victoria said it was too bold. If she wore blue, it was too plain. If she talked at dinner, she was rude. If she stayed quiet, she was boring. Nothing was ever right. Victoria watched her like a hawk watches a mouse, waiting for any tiny mistake. Then Damien started changing too. He stopped defending Jazz when his mother criticized her. He started agreeing with Victoria. When Jazz tried to talk to him alone, he seemed distant, like his mother's voice was always in his head. He wasn't always mean, Jazz said, and fresh tears rolled down her face. But Victoria got inside his mind. She told him I was trying to steal the family money. That I was just a poor girl who trapped him. She poisoned him against me. 6 months into the marriage, Victoria took away Jazz's phone. Said it was a security risk. Then she took control of Jazz's bank account, the one I had been sending money to. Said she would manage it better. Jazz tried to argue, but Victoria showed her papers, documents with Jazz's signature on them, giving Victoria power over everything. I never signed those papers, Jazz whispered. But they looked so real. They had my signature. I don't know how. I knew how. Forgery. It's easier than people think when you have money to pay experts. The isolation got worse. Victoria fired any servant who was nice to Jazz. She told Jazz's old friends that Jazz didn't want to see them anymore. She returned Jazz's letters to me, telling the mailman that Jazz had moved away. She built invisible walls around my sister until Jazz was alone in a house full of people. Then came the physical abuse. It started with Victoria. A slap across the face when Jazz spoke out of turn. A shove down the stairs when Jazz walked too slowly. Victoria always did it when no one else was around, and she always had an explanation ready. Jazz fell. Jazz was clumsy. Jazz had an accident. I tried to tell Damien, Jazz said, her voice breaking. But he didn't believe me. He said his mother would never do that. He said I was lying to turn him against his family. Then Damien started hitting her too. The first time, he said it was an accident. He was angry about work and his hand flew out. He cried afterward. Begged for forgiveness. Promised it would never happen again. Jazz wanted to believe him. She wanted her husband back, the man who used to bring her flowers and call her beautiful. But it happened again. And again. Each time, Damien had a reason. Jazz made him angry. Jazz embarrassed him in front of his mother. Jazz wasn't grateful enough for the life he gave her. The excuses piled up like bricks in a wall. Victoria moved Jazz to this attic room 6 months ago. Said Jazz needed to think about her behavior. The lock appeared on the outside of the door. They brought her food once a day, usually cold leftovers. They let her out to use the bathroom twice a day, always with a guard watching. The rest of the time, she sat in this cold, empty room, counting the cracks in the ceiling and wondering if anyone would ever find her. I tried to escape, Jazz said. 3 times. But they caught me every time. The last time Victoria told me if I tried again, she'd have me declared mentally ill and locked away in a hospital. She has doctors who owe her favors. She said no one would ever believe me over her. My hands clenched into fists. Rage burned through my veins like fire. All those years I worked so hard to protect Jazz, to make sure she never suffered again, and she had been suffering in the worst way possible. While I managed billions in Switzerland, my sister was locked in an attic, beaten and starving. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She took my phone, my computer, my voice, and I was ashamed. Jazz looked down at her hands. I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I really was ungrateful. Maybe I really was a poor girl who didn't belong in their world. No. I grabbed her hands, held them tight. Don't ever think that. This isn't your fault. They're criminals. Both of them. And I'm going to prove it. How? They're too powerful. I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile I used in Geneva when someone tried to cheat me in a deal. Jazz, I've spent 15 years learning how powerful people hide their crimes. I know every trick, every loophole, every secret, and I know people who can help us. Over the next hour, I made Jazz tell me every detail she could remember. Every document she signed. Every bank account they mentioned. Every time Victoria or Damien said something about money or property or business. Jazz had a good memory, better than she realized. She remembered names of lawyers, accountants, business partners. She remembered seeing papers on Victoria's desk. She remembered overhearing phone calls. I took mental notes of everything, building a map in my mind. These people thought they were smart, but they had made mistakes. Rich people always make mistakes because they think they're untouchable. We need to get you out of here tonight, I said. Can you walk? Jazz nodded, though she winced when she stood up. Where will we go? Somewhere safe. I have a friend who owns a private security company. He owes me a favor. We'll go there first, get you checked by a doctor, then we plan our next move. Victoria will come after us. Let her. But next time we'll be ready. I helped Jazz pack the few things she had. 1 change of clothes. A photo of us as kids that she'd hidden under her mattress. Nothing else in that room belonged to her anymore. We crept down the narrow stairs, through the dark hallways, back the way I came. Every shadow made my heart jump. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. We made it to the servants' entrance. Freedom was 10 steps away. 5 steps. 3 steps. Then the lights blazed on. Victoria stood at the end of the hallway in a silk robe, her face twisted with rage. Behind her were 2 security guards, big men with hard faces. Behind them was Damien, his eyes cold and empty. "Did you really think," Victoria said, her voice like ice, "that I didn't know you were here? I've been watching on camera since you climbed my wall. I wanted to see how far you'd get." "The answer is not far at all." The guards moved toward us. I pushed Jazz behind me and stood my ground. "Touch us and I'll have you arrested for assault," I said. Victoria laughed. "Arrested? Darling, I own the police chief. I own the judges. I own this entire city. You're nothing but a glorified accountant who forgot her place. Guards, remove this intruder. And take Jasmine back to her room. Clearly she needs a stronger lock." The first guard reached for me. I didn't move. I just smiled. "Before you do that," I said calmly, "you should know that in exactly 30 seconds, 3 things are going to happen. First, copies of every illegal financial transaction Victoria has made in the past 10 years will be sent to the federal prosecutor. Second, a team of lawyers will file for an emergency protective order for Jasmine. Third, Detective Sarah Chen of the Financial Crimes Unit, who I called before I came here, will arrive with a warrant." Victoria's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Your offshore account in the Cayman Islands under the name Whitmore Holdings LLC? The one with $12 million from tax evasion? I have the records. Want me to keep going?" The color drained from Victoria's face. Right on time, we heard sirens outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps came up the front walk. I looked at Victoria and saw fear in her eyes for the first time. "Game over," I said. "Now it's my turn to make the rules." Detective Sarah Chen walked through the front door with 4 officers behind her. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I'd worked with her 2 years ago on a case involving stolen charity money. She owed me a favor, and tonight I was calling it in. "Mrs. Whitmore," Detective Chen said, holding up a warrant. "We have permission to search this property and take you in for questioning regarding financial fraud, forgery, and unlawful imprisonment." Victoria's face turned red, then white, then red again. "This is outrageous. I'll have your badge." "You can try," Detective Chen said calmly. "Officers, please escort Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Whitmore to separate vehicles. And someone call an ambulance for the victim." I'll never forget the look on Victoria's face as the officers put handcuffs on her wrists. All her power, all her control, all her cruelty melted away. She was just a woman in a bathrobe being arrested in her own home. Damien didn't even fight. He just stood there with empty eyes, looking lost without his mother telling him what to do. Jazz collapsed against me, sobbing with relief. The ambulance came and took her to the hospital. I rode with her, holding her hand the entire way. The doctor said she was malnourished, dehydrated, and had 3 cracked ribs. But she would heal. Bodies heal faster than hearts, but both can heal if given time and care. The next morning, I made phone calls. Lots of them. I called my friend Marcus Washington, a lawyer who specialized in abuse cases. I called Regina Stone, a former spy who now worked in private investigation. I called my contacts in Switzerland who knew how to trace dirty money. I built a team and that team got to work. Before I tell you how we brought down the Whitmore empire, please hit that like button if you're enjoying this story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the ending. And comment below telling us where you're watching from because we genuinely love hearing from you. Your support means everything. Now let me tell you about justice. What we found was worse than I imagined. Victoria had been stealing from Jazz since the day she married Damien. Remember those papers Jazz never signed? Victoria had hired an expert forger to copy Jazz's signature perfectly. She used those fake signatures to transfer all the money I'd sent to Jazz into accounts Victoria controlled. $12 million over 5 years. My money, meant to keep my sister safe, stolen and hidden offshore. But Victoria had been greedy in other ways too. She'd been stealing from her own family business, from charities she ran, from investors who trusted her. Regina found bank records showing Victoria had 27 different secret accounts. Marcus found 3 other women who'd married into wealthy families and disappeared. Just like Jazz. We couldn't prove Victoria hurt them, but the pattern was there, clear as daylight. The trial took 6 months. During that time, Jazz lived with me in a safe house that Marcus arranged. She saw a therapist 3 times a week. A kind doctor named Dr. Patel who specialized in helping people recover from abuse. At first, Jazz barely talked. She sat by the window for hours, staring at nothing. Some days she couldn't eat. Some nights she woke up screaming. But slowly, like a flower growing towards sunlight, my sister came back to me. She started smiling again. Small smiles at first, then bigger ones. She started talking about the future. She planted a garden in the backyard of the safe house, putting seeds in the dirt with her own hands. Watching things grow helped her remember she could grow too. The trial was hard. Jazz had to sit in a courtroom and tell her story in front of strangers. She had to look at Victoria and Damien and describe every terrible thing they did. I sat behind her every single day, and every time her voice shook, I was there. Marcus was brilliant. He showed the jury the forged documents. He brought in handwriting experts who proved Victoria faked Jazz's signatures. He showed bank records proving Victoria stole millions. He played recordings from the house security cameras that Victoria thought no one could access. But Regina was smarter. She'd hacked the system and downloaded everything. The jury heard Victoria slapping Jazz. They heard Damien threatening her. They heard Victoria telling the guards to lock Jazz in her room and not feed her for 2 days. The jury's faces changed as they listened. Some looked sick. Some looked angry. All of them looked like they'd made up their minds. Victoria's lawyers tried to say Jazz was lying. They tried to say she was after the Whitmore money. But how could she be after money that was already hers? How could she be lying when we had videos, recordings, bank records, and medical reports showing her injuries? The verdict came on a cold Tuesday in March. The jury found Victoria guilty on all charges. Fraud, forgery, theft, assault, unlawful imprisonment. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. She would be 78 years old before she got out. Damien got 15 years for assault and for helping his mother hide the stolen money. He cried when they read his sentence. He said he was sorry. He said his mother made him do it. The judge didn't care. Being weak isn't an excuse for cruelty. The Whitmore fortune was frozen. After paying back everyone Victoria stole from, after legal fees, after everything was sorted out, there wasn't much left. The mansion was sold. The fancy cars were sold. The jewelry was sold. Everything that family used to show off their power was gone. And Jazz? She got her money back. Every penny I'd sent her over 5 years, plus interest. She also got compensation for what they did to her. It wasn't about the money though. It was about justice. It was about the world saying what happened to her was wrong. 6 months after the trial ended, I stood in a garden with Jazz. Not just any garden. This was a special place called the Rose Garden Recovery Center. Jazz had used some of her money to buy an old building and turn it into a shelter for women escaping abuse. Women who had nowhere to go, no one to help them, no voice to speak up for them. The garden was full of roses. Red ones, pink ones, yellow ones, white ones. Jazz planted every single one herself. She said roses reminded her that beautiful things can have thorns, but thorns don't mean you shouldn't plant them. You just have to be careful and wear gloves. We sat on a wooden bench in the sunshine. Jazz looked different now. Healthy. Strong. Her hair had grown back long. The bruises were gone. But more importantly, the emptiness in her eyes was gone. She looked alive again. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For keeping your promise. For coming back. For not giving up on me." I took her hand. "I'll always come back for you. That's what sisters do." "I've been thinking," Jazz said, "about what I want to do next. I want to help other people like me. People who are trapped and don't know how to get out. I want to teach them that they're worth saving." "You already are," I said, looking at the shelter behind us. 20 women lived there now. Safe and healing. 20 women who Jazz gave a second chance. As for me, I started a new company with Marcus and Regina. We called it Washington and Partners. We specialized in protecting people from financial abuse. We helped people hide money from dangerous partners. We found evidence of fraud. We built cases that couldn't be broken. We became the people you called when someone was trying to steal your life. I split my time between Geneva and home now. I couldn't leave Jazz again. Wouldn't leave her again. Money was still important, but it wasn't everything. What good was all my wealth if I couldn't protect the person I loved most? Jazz's garden grew bigger every season. More roses, more flowers, more life. Sometimes I helped her plant new bushes. We'd dig in the dirt together, our hands side by side like when we were kids sharing one pair of gloves. One day, while we were planting a new rose bush, Jazz said something I'll never forget. "You know what I learned?" she asked. "What?" "Being poor isn't the worst thing that can happen to someone. Being alone is. Being trapped is. Having no one who believes you is." We were poor as kids, but we were never alone. We always had each other. She was right. We made a promise when we were 10 years old to never let each other be poor again. But the real promise, the one that mattered, was simpler. We promised never to abandon each other. And we kept that promise. Through distance, through danger, through everything. The roses bloomed around us, red and bright and alive. Jazz smiled at me, a real smile that reached her eyes. Somewhere far away, Victoria sat in a prison cell. The woman who thought power meant control learned that real power is different. Real power is knowing when to be gentle. Real power is protecting people weaker than you. Real power is keeping your promises, even when it costs you everything. "Want to plant another one?" Jazz asked, holding up a new rose bush. "Always," I said. We dug side by side in the warm dirt. Two sisters building something beautiful from broken ground. The garden would keep growing. The shelter would help more women. And we would keep our promise, forever and always, to never let each other face the darkness alone. If you or someone you know is facing abuse or control like Jasmine did, please remember this. You are not alone, and you are worth saving. There are people who will believe you, who will fight for you, who will help you escape. Courage can reshape even the deepest power. Justice might look like patience and planning, but it will come. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to give up on you. One person who remembers their promise. One person who loves you enough to tear down walls. You deserve to bloom too. Just like the roses.